I never thought a simple prayer before bed would open a door I should never have crossed. It was an ordinary night, but something burned inside me, a restlessness, an invisible whisper, as if heaven and hell were fighting for my attention. As I closed my eyes, I asked the Lord to show me the truth behind the fallen stars, the idols the world still worships. I wasn't looking for fame or visions, I just wanted answers. But what I saw was all too real. If you also believe something strange surrounds music icons, share what country you're listening to me from and let God's light touch your home. Tonight, I suddenly found myself in a dark hallway with walls that breathed as if alive. Every step I took brought me closer to a sound, distant music, an echo of blues mixed with wailing. It was hypnotic, but laden with pain. In the background, a giant door made of red neon pulsed to the rhythm of invisible contraband music. When I pushed it, an unbearable heat enveloped me. And there he was, sitting on a throne of golden bones, dressed in his classic white suit, but soaked with sweat and ash. Elvis Presley, not as a rock king, but as a prisoner of eternal fire. His gaze was confused, broken. At first, I thought he would ignore me, but as soon as I crossed the threshold, his eyes stared at me in desperation. "You came to mock me too," his hoarse voice, heavy with spiritual weight, asked. Behind him, shadows danced to the rhythm of his old songs. Demons played guitars made of skulls and strings of human screams. Every note, every chorus was a reminder of how many souls had been seduced by his voice, unaware that his talent came with a hidden price. "I didn't know what I was doing at first," he said as he slowly stood up. He just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to fill a void that neither money, nor sex, nor crowds could fill. He walked up to a display case embedded in rock. Inside lay a contract with his name signed in blood. He came to me in the form of a producer. He promised eternal fame. He told me he'd be larger than life, and he was. But what he didn't tell me was that every applause would add another chain to my soul. Then I saw Satan appear before him, not as a beast, but as an impersonator. He was a mocking copy of Elvis himself, with exaggerated movements, a mocking smile, and a crooked crown. "You wanted to be a king, right? Well, here is your eternal throne, with no way out." Elvis fell to his knees, covering his ears. Enough. Enough with that song. But he couldn't run away. The music was part of him. He haunted him, condemned him, and Satan kept reminding him of the price he had paid for his place in history. The atmosphere in that place was thick, as if every molecule was steeped in accumulated sin. The air moved with a rhythm that mimicked old Elvis concerts, but distorted, corrupted, like a hellish parody. With each note, the walls vibrated and warped, revealing the faces of fans screaming, not for excitement, but for help. "I accidentally led them there," Elvis murmured, his hands shaking. "I thought it was just music, but every verse I sang was a key that opened the wrong doors." And then he looked at me with a fire in his eyes that was a mixture of guilt and pleading. "Can you warn them? Can you tell them this isn't a game?" As he spoke, the floor began to split, and a scene emerged before us as if a memory ripped from time itself. It was one of his first television appearances, surrounded by screams, lights, and millions of eyes fixed on him, but what couldn't be seen then was revealed now. Behind the stage, demonic figures whispered words, gestures, movements to him. He choreographed it like a puppet. They told me that if I moved my hips like that, it would cause a sensation. And it did. But I also opened the door to lust for entire generations. You understand now? It wasn't just a dance. I saw then how a woman trapped in the shadows screamed his name. "Elvis, for you. I lost my soul. I followed you to the end. I left my family. I immersed myself in bloggers, in pleasure for you." His face was that of thousands, millions, faces that had idolized the idol more than the creator. And he knew it. He fell to the ground, pounding his fists on the hot rock. "I am not God, I never was, but the world worshipped me as if I were." And Satan, laughing from on high, repeated, "That's my favorite trick, turning men into idols and then devouring them with the cries of his own fame. In a corner of the room, a broken mirror showed what could have been. Elvis preaching on a stage, not with music, but with testimony. His guitar turned into a cross, his voice proclaiming freedom, the crowds weeping, but for salvation. He approached the mirror, touching it with his fingertips. "This was what was meant to be," he said. "This was the original plan, but I sold it for applause." The mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces. It couldn't withstand the weight of the truth. Thick smoke began to rise from the ground, enveloping us. I saw well-known figures from the music world appear. Some still alive on earth, others already fallen. They all had something in common, a burning mark on their foreheads, a symbol that looked like a musical clef twisted into the shape of a snake. "This is the sign of the marked," a voice told me. "Those who surrendered their gift in exchange for control, fame, and dominion." And I understood that it wasn't just Elvis, he was just another on a hellish list that kept growing. Satan then descended in a red robe adorned with record label emblems, occult symbols, and burning bills. "What will you do with this truth, visitor? I wonder, will you warn the world, or will you also be seduced by the echo of applause?" I approached Elvis, who was almost fading away in tears and ash. "Tell them," he whispered, "tell them that no fame is worth an eternity of torment, that the stage is no greater than the altar of the Almighty." That was when a heavenly voice pierced the entire underworld. "There is still time to warn. There is still time for redemption," and a chasm of light opened above me. I felt I should leave, that I had fulfilled my mission for now, but Elvis's gaze would haunt me forever. It wasn't hatred, it wasn't rage, it was hope that his story wouldn't repeat itself. When the heavenly light faded behind me, I knew I wasn't free yet. There were still things I needed to see, messages that hell itself was clamoring to reveal. I walked among charred ruins that had once seemed like musical temples. Warped stages emerged from the earth, and on them, spectral figures eternally repeated their most iconic performances like broken puppets. One of those stages was covered in melted vinyl records, and in the center, a crouched figure moaned while holding a fire-breathing microphone. It was another famous face, but Elvis was still there, watching from the shadows, chained to his legacy. He approached me with shuffling steps. Each chain attached to my body had names carved into it: fans, musicians, producers, even family members. I didn't just condemn myself, I dragged down everyone who idolized me without understanding that I was as weak as them. He showed me an old letter, burned around the edges. I recognized the handwriting, a contract with promises of success, travel, power over the masses, and a barely legible final clause. "The surrendered soul cannot be reclaimed." He signed it with his blood at 21 in a studio where, he claimed, music had eyes. The flames around him intensified when he mentioned he wasn't alone. "I'm not the only one who signed, and Satan is still hungry," he muttered. Behind us, a rusty iron door opened with an eerie screech. On the other side, a gigantic hall stretched as far as the eye could see. It was filled with empty thrones with names carved in black stone, fallen idols, some still alive. Others already forgotten. One of the thrones had the King of Pop written on it, and another the voice of rap. Elvis stopped in front of a third, still unnamed. He said to me, "This is the next one, and it sounds familiar." A young figure appeared walking down the hall. His silhouette was unmistakable, but his face was covered by a gold mask. Behind him, a choir of shadows sang his hits backward, while the floor lit up with millions of views and likes. "Do you recognize him?" Elvis asked. He didn't need to answer. I recognized him by his posture, his gait, his aura. I won't say his name, but he's one of the greatest of this generation. He can still choose. He hasn't signed his signature yet, but the hooks are already in his back, he said. And he showed me some fine, dark strands extending from the shadows toward his neck. Satan appeared once again, with a cup brimming with applause. "Fame is a sweet wine, but it intoxicates to the soul. And when you wake up, you're already at my table. He showed me a thick book, made of human skin, with thousands of pages. Every idol has a chapter, and every fan a footnote. He flipped through it slowly until he reached the Elvis section. Its page was burned around the edges, but it remained open. He still sings, he still drags. Then he slammed it shut, and the echo shook the entire abyss. We walked through a gallery of distorted mirrors. In each one, Elvis saw a different version of himself. One preaching in churches, another being a present father, another dying peacefully with his faith intact. But all those reflections were possibilities that never came to pass. Hell shows you what you lost, not as punishment, but as torture. He said, a tear running down his ash-covered cheek. I felt the weight of that phrase like a spear in my soul. We then arrived at a lake, not of water, but of melted musical instruments, guitars, pianos, microphones, all deformed by the heat. Each bubble that emerged from the lake released a scream, a note, a phrase from some song. And every time that happened, the demons howled with pleasure. This is the swamp of corrupt rhythm, Elvis explained. Here are fed the sounds that invoke passions, hatreds, everything that anesthetizes the spirit. I saw figures being pulled into the lake by invisible ropes. Some were recognizable, others young hopefuls. None knew what awaited them. Before leaving, Elvis took me to a corner of the abyss where the fire couldn't reach. There was a broken cross, black with smoke, but still standing. Here I knelt once. Before everything, he confessed, God spoke to me, but I wouldn't listen. He bowed before that cross and cried, I'm still here, Lord. It still hurts. I still believe you can hear me. And for a moment, the fire stopped. Silence reigned, and the light breeze swept through that place. Elvis looked at me with real tears. This time, tell my story. Maybe that way, someone will be saved, even if I can't. In the center of the abyss, an amphitheater carved from bone and shadow appeared. The stands filled with deformed figures screamed as if waiting for a spectacle. In the background, a stage was illuminated with lights that were not of this world. Poisonous purples, bloody reds, and a blue that made the eyes hurt. At the center of that stage, Elvis emerged again, but not like before. This time he wore a crown made of metal spikes and a cape of molten leather. They cheered him not for redemption, but for eternal entertainment. Satan raised his staff and shouted, Let the King of Lost Souls sing. And the music began, not with joy, but with soul-piercing wails. The song he was singing did not exist on earth. It was a mixture of broken prayers, cries of despair, and the names of those who had blindly followed him. Each note released images. A young woman committing suicide to the rhythm of one of his ballads. A man abandoning his family for a life of excess that he copied from his idol. A child crying because his father worshipped a singer more than God. Elvis watched them from the stage, his voice cracking more and more with every face. This isn't music, he shouted between verses. It's damnation disguised as melody. Satan approached the stage, laughing mockingly. You wanted to be eternal, didn't you? Well, here is your eternity. He handed him a guitar whose strings were human veins. With every song you play, you will relive the sins you inspired. And Elvis, trembling, refused. But the chains on his wrists forced him to continue. The shadows applauded wildly. Hell doesn't forget its idols, it recycles them, transforming them into perpetual symbols of what happens when talent is separated from divine truth. I walked away from the scene with a heavy heart. I walked down a hallway where the walls were screens playing interviews, documentaries, video clips, everything about Elvis. But behind every image was a shadow, a demon whispering, manipulating, guiding every step of his career. No one gets this far without paying the price, a hooded figure told me. And almost no one realizes when they pay it. I realized that many pacts aren't signed with blood on altars, but with daily decisions that distance the Creator. In a hidden corner, I found a female figure weeping. It was Priscilla, not physically, but her essence, trapped between regrets and memories. I loved him, but I lost him to the monster that inhabited him. He showed me a locket, a cross that Elvis wore in the beginning, before the contracts, before stardom. This was the only thing that protected him, and he threw it away for a gold medal bearing his name. The locket glowed for a moment, then went out. She disappeared amid wails, as if her soul were still fighting to redeem it from another dimension. I continued on my way and came to a room where the demonic hosts were gathering. They were planning. On an infernal table were maps of the world with red dots shining in each city. Here the new idols will be born, they said. Here they will sign without knowing it. And one of them, pointing to an area in Latin America, said, "We almost have the next one. Fame is seducing him like it is everyone." I saw names, familiar faces, some not yet famous, others already at the top. What if someone notices them? One asked. Satan replied, "It doesn't matter. No one listens until it's too late." The air grew thick. I felt I should go back, but first, Elvis called me one last time. He came forward with difficulty, dragging his chains. "I'll show you the pact," he said. He led me to a room sealed with fire. Inside was a black marble table. On it was a pen made of fallen angel feathers and a book open to Elvis's page. His signature was there, but something gleamed beneath it. A second signature. Someone else had signed it for him. My manager. He murmured. He sold me out. I just played it. That man's face appeared among the flames, laughing. Hell has many representatives. Before leaving, I saw how hell began to close in on itself. The door was closing, but a voice cried from within. "You can still warn them." It was Elvis wrapped in dim light, not his own, but from what remained of his buried faith. Not all are lost, some can choose. And so I woke up sweating, trembling with the echo of his voice still in my ears. It wasn't a dream, it was a warning. And if you're reading this, it's because you too must decide, will you follow the idols or seek the Creator? As I walked away from that hell molded for fallen stars, I began to notice that not everything was fragmented and destroyed. There were hallways with display cases, in them objects of worship, melted vinyl records, posters with the faces of idols covered by shadows, guitars wrapped in snakes, each object radiating a corrupt energy. I stopped in front of one, an old Elvis poster with his signature. As I touched the glass, I heard a stifled scream, as if the soul trapped in that image was still pleading for freedom. "The fans don't know what they worship," a voice whispered behind me. "Nor who offers it to them." I turned and found myself facing a disfigured being, half producer, half beast. His face was constantly distorting, as if each contract signed had left him more rotten. I created legends and destroyed them just as easily. They're not artists, they're weapons, and you can't stop what's coming. He walked with a confident stride, dragging a burning briefcase. You saw Elvis, but there are hundreds more, millions on TikTok, on YouTube, on the radio. All of them signing their names with every viral video, with every subliminal message that not even they could imagine. They understand. The laughter he let out split the walls like thunder. I saw a floating screen showing scenes from the earth. Crowds worshipping with cell phones held high. Tears streaming down the halls to see their idol in concert, parents pushing their children to pursue famous careers from childhood. This is the new cult. The churches are empty, but the stadiums are overflowing. Satan walked through the stands collecting tears. Sighs, subscriptions, likes. All of this is incense to me. And who do you secretly worship? That question was etched in my mind like an invisible tattoo. In another corner of the underworld, I discovered a choir of voices that seemed to be praising, but as I got closer, I noticed they were singing Elvis lyrics backward, famous songs distorted in rituals. This plays at parties, weddings, funerals, and no one notices, a shadow in the shape of a DJ told me. You don't need to pray to Satan directly, just sing what he inspired. Each verse became a rope that caught me. Souls. Camouflaged worship is my specialty, the demon said, adjusting his headphones with a nauseating smile. Up ahead, I saw a table with several carved names, artists from different decades, but what chilled my blood was seeing empty spaces. Here will go those who come. Some are already being prepared. One of the future names seemed like someone I knew. This is inevitable. No, a bright voice answered, but it requires awakening before the stage becomes an altar of the enemy. An illuminated cross appeared for a second, but vanished amid demonic laughter. In an even deeper cavern, I found a woman dressed in evening dress with smudged makeup. She sang in a heartbreaking voice while the shadows applauded her. Who is she? A desire that gave her soul without knowing it, just to resemble her idol. Now she sings eternally without real applause. Her echo was a mixture of pain and misguided devotion. The problem is not that admire, they replace. The idol replaces the savior, and that phrase struck like a sword. In a final corridor, there were murals with dates. 1956, 1977, 2025, and each year was marked with explosions of influence. These are the years where the most souls were led astray by music, said a custodian. Every revival, every tribute, every biography not only revives history, it revives the Pact. I saw how Elvis's spirit was invoked in programs, theme parties, even at funerals. And every time someone says, Elvis lives, the echo of the contract is activated. Satan reappeared. Now, dressed as a modern producer, dark glasses, open shirt, chains round his neck. I don't need horns, just a good algorithm. And he raised a cell phone that burned with digital fire. Here I have access to every mind, every desire, every click. Fame no longer needs theaters, just a screen. Then he showed a list of names, some well-known, others on the rise. All of them had already heard the offer. Some will say no, but most just want a chance. In the background, Elvis knelt weeping as the chains forced him to keep playing. But each note now took the form of a prayer. Maybe there's still time, he murmured. If anyone up there remembers me. If anyone prays for me. Perhaps the tears would fall to the burning floor and evaporate instantly. And with his last breath, before the curtain fell again, he cried, "Don't let your children fall like me. Don't sell your voice or your soul." And that warning echoed until I woke up. I emerged from that vision with my soul trembling, but before I could process what I had experienced, I was dragged by an invisible force into a new hellish chamber. This time, the walls were made of torn vinyl, burned posters, and magazine clippings that chronicled Elvis's life as if they were sacred scriptures. Each image moved as if it had a life of its own, screaming, crying, or repeating iconic phrases. Elvis lives, some said. The king has returned, others clamored. And I understood that while the world repeats these phrases without knowing their spiritual meaning, the echo of the Pact remains in place. In the center of that room, a throne made of rusted microphones and broken guitars held a figure writhing in pain. He was an imitator, a fan so devoted that his soul had been dragged to the source of his obsession. He dressed like Elvis, spoke like him, even in hell he tried to maintain his style, but the demons ridiculed him mercilessly. "You're nobody here, just another slave to the cult we helped build." The man tried to sing, but each note came out like an agonized wail. There was no more glory, only eternal humiliation. Then I saw a kind of inverted altar where demonic priests celebrated black masses using popular song lyrics as litanies. Instead of bread and wine, they offered drugs and contracts. They did this in dressing rooms, at private parties. "Now we do it here without masks," one said as he smeared blood on a sheet of music. I recognized that sheet music, it was "Can't Help Falling in Love." But it was full of hidden symbols, as if it had been designed from the beginning as a trap. Love, when not aligned with God, becomes the most effective bait, a fallen spirit whispered. I approached a window of fire that showed thousands of young people on earth rehearsing choreographies, recording covers, doing challenges. They didn't know that every imitation would leave a small crack in their spirit. It's not about music, explained an ethereal being with burned wings. It's about identity. When you copy, you renounce, and when you renounce, another takes your place. I felt a chill. How many had lost their true calling by chasing fame? How many had strayed from divine purpose by seeking earthly applause? Up ahead, a hall of mirrors showed the many faces of Elvis. The humble young man who sang gospel, the seductive rebel, the soldier, the drug addict, the sick man, the idol. Each version was manipulated by invisible threads that connected to a gigantic creature on the ceiling, a kind of demonic spider that wove with human emotions. Every stage was planned, every fall allowed, every drug calculated, because it's not just about him, it's about all those who followed him. The spider looked at me and said, "And you, which mask are you wearing?" I moved on to a gallery where other legends were trapped in living glass cases, some famous, others anonymous. All screamed silently. These weren't condemned for singing or acting, but for becoming the center of worship. A voice narrated as if it were a macabre documentary. When your name is more remembered than Jesus's, there is a price. And Elvis was one of the first to pay dearly. Each trapped face seemed to repeat a single phrase with their mouths, but without sound. It wasn't worth it. In the next chamber, a children's choir sang lullabies backward, all inspired by classical melodies that, according to the demons, were sacred from the beginning. The parents sang them with love, unaware that they contained ancient summoning codes. Elvis didn't write these codes, but he was the perfect channel. The room was filled with music that was both sweet and wicked. A sense of contaminated nostalgia, as if the world's childhood were being hijacked song by song. In that instantly, a portal appeared showing a Christian church, and on the altar, a pastor was preaching enthusiastically while an instrumental version of an Elvis song played in the background. "You see," a voice roared. "Not even there." Church distinguishes between the holy and the profane. The Holy Spirit was slowly withdrawing from that place, and a fog began to cover the congregation. Good intentions aren't enough. There are melodies that carry curses. I felt powerless, wanting to warn them, but my voice wouldn't come out. I was trapped between two dimensions. Before leaving, I saw Elvis for the last time, alone in a circular cell without doors. Sitting. He was murmuring a prayer. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't theologically correct, but it was sincere. "God, if you still hear me, not for me, but for those I dragged along. Stop this." A flash crossed the cell. It didn't free him, but it illuminated his face. Perhaps there is still hope for others. And there, amid the chaos, a spark of redemption flickered briefly. It wasn't complete salvation, but it was a reminder that even in hell, true repentance can leave mark. The murmur of hell grew denser as I walked down a hallway aligned with gold records, embedded in the walls like cursed trophies. Each one was engraved with a name, and touching them echoed pacts, whispers, contracts signed in blood, nights of glory and despair. It wasn't just Elvis, there were many, too many. This hallway never ends, a long shadow crawling across the ceiling told me. As long as there are those who prefer fame to salvation, we'll continue to hang more records. I walked to a stage raised on a mass of bodies that barely moved, as if they were the living base of a platform of idolatry. Above, a demon in the form of a record producer led a band made up of damned souls. The instruments were made of bones, and the sound that came out wasn't music, but harmonic wailing. Each note triggered a reaction in the surrounding shadows, who clapped, laughed, mimicked like a possessed audience. "The show must go on," the director shouted, while a bright, burning sign read "Idol Reunion." In a corner of that same room, I saw something that chilled my blood, an exact replica of Elvis's funeral. Only here, the hearse was being pulled by demons in evening gowns, and instead of flowers, they threw torn contracts, broken promises, and burned photographs. To the sides, thousands of fans wept, but their tears turned into small flames when they touched the ground. Not even his death freed him, because the cult continued, and where there is cult, there is a pact that lives on. I saw Elvis again, now standing, watching from afar that entire macabre ritual. He was no longer crying. His face was hardened, like someone who finally understands the weight of his choices. I wanted to warn them, but no one would have listened. Everyone preferred the legend. He walked toward a figure covered in a dark robe. It was his former manager. Also condemned. You sold me out for pennies and made me believe it was my decision. The other didn't respond. He just grumbled to ashes as if he couldn't hold my gaze. Further on, I found a library made of cursed sheet music. There, demons with black feathers were writing new songs ready to be introduced to the world. Some were already in rotation on Earth, on playlists, on radio, on social media. It's not just the rhythm, it's the message, a guardian of the place explained. Each verse has a purpose, each chorus a hook, and each artist who sings them signs them without knowing it. Among the pages, I recognized all inspired in part by infernal formulas tested decades ago. In another chamber, I saw an unknown young man playing the guitar while he cried. He was a musician who had just died on Earth, the victim of an overdose. He still didn't understand where he was. He repeated Elvis's name as if it were a prayer. They said he started that way too, that if he continued on his way, he would achieve the same thing. Elvis watched him from the shadows, his heart breaking. I didn't do it out of malice, I just wanted to sing. But hell is never satisfied with your talent, it wants your soul. A platform slowly descended from the ceiling, revealing what appeared to be an awards ceremony. Demonic statuettes were awarded to figures who had most influenced generations with messages contrary to the kingdom of God. The names echoed loudly, as if hell were celebrating. This is what the world applauds, said a hooded entity. But here, this is evidence. Each award presented was accompanied by a collective roar, and among the names, once again, Elvis's appeared, etched in fire on marble. In one of the side aisles, a glass case displayed burned Bibles alongside album covers. It was a brutal comparison. How much time had people dedicated to one versus the other? Here, we measure your faith by your habits, said a whispering voice. That's why hell loves entertainment, because it's a blessed day when no one has time to pray, remember God, or read the Bible. How many times did you repeat a verse of a song and how many times did you meditate on their word? I felt a deep shame. Even I, who wasn't a fan, recognized melodies that had been in my head since childhood. It wasn't just entertainment. It was sowing, the voice concluded. Near the end, I was led to a room where the walls projected testimonies of people who had been freed after abandoning secular music. They wept, they worshipped, they told how they felt chains breaking. And in each one of them, the name Elvis appeared as the origin, as the root. Socada was the seed for thousands of slaves, said an angel, covered in light, but it can also be a warning for millions. The scales are not yet closed. History continues to be written, and you must decide which side you want to be on. There was a hidden hallway behind the large hall where the infernal awards ceremony was being held. A hallway without walls composed of floating musical notes that vibrated in the air like blades. As I walked through it, each step activated a distorted melody. I recognized many hymns, love songs transformed into laments, ballads turned into satanic taunts. This is spiritual reprogramming, a hooded demon explained. We take the sacred and make it sensual. We turn the pure into provocation and then sell it as art. That phrase was etched in my soul. At the end of that hallway, a kind of inverted theater opened up. The seats were hung from the ceiling, and the stage was a fiery pit. Projections of young people on Earth appeared, dancing to Elvis songs on TikTok, unaware that every movement fueled an eternal echo in that place. It's not just about the dead person, it's about how their legacy continues to contaminate us. Elvis, who was following me from afar, fell to his knees. I didn't know. I didn't imagine that they would still be using me decades later. I no longer had control, but Satan did. A throne of spikes emerged from the center of the stage. Sitting on it, Satan observed everything like an orchestra conductor. He moved his fingers slowly, and as he did, scenes of the earth changed. A concert in Europe, a viral music video, a live awards show. You see, he told me, I still master the rhythm. As long as people worship sound over the silence of God, I'll keep winning. Beside him, demons held guitars, microphones, cameras. They didn't need guns, they had culture. They led me to a smaller, but even more oppressive room. Unseen scenes from Elvis's life were projected there. Private moments where he cried, prayed in secret, and doubted. There were attempts to return, said an angel with a sad face. But the contract was strong. Every time I thought about escaping, they offered more money, more tours, more drugs. And then I understood, the trap isn't just selling your soul, it's keeping you tied to the success Satan gives you. The cage was made of gold, but a cage nonetheless. A literal cage appeared in the room. Inside, Elvis's soul, still in his white Las Vegas attire, banged desperately against the bars. I thought it was free. I thought I was loved. But there were no fans here, only echoes repeating the industry's empty promises. On the walls, contracts signed in blood, many nameless, waiting for the next talent willing to sign. I saw one with my name on it and stepped back, trembling. Everyone has a price, the voice whispered. What's yours? Suddenly, the walls of that room disintegrated and revealed a spiritual battlefield. Angels fought against hordes of shadows singing in forgotten languages. Fragments of songs floated in the sky, transformed into swords, shields, curses. It was an invisible war that affected Earth. Every time a song was released, Elvis stood in the middle, confused, trapped between light and darkness. Who do you serve? A powerful voice asked. From heaven. He looked down and didn't answer. A child appeared on the scene wearing an old Elvis t-shirt. He played with a toy guitar, imitating the movements of the king of rock, but around him, small shadows whispered to him. Be like him. Do the same. Rip.